Well, hello, everyone. It's great to see you for
What's
this
up?
week's roundtable. We have a full house. It's nice to see everybody. So
Thanks,
today
Absolutely.
Adam.
we're going to talk about plant medicine, and we have some experience with plant medicine, and some of us in different areas. I am completely inexperienced with plant medicine, except aspirin comes from plants. And we won't talk about whether bourbon comes from plants or whether it's medicine. So, but I have a more limited experience. So, welcome. We'll go around and find out where everybody is. We'll do 2 minutes of slides, including some funny memes, and then we'll get into our discussion. So I'm excited about this topic, and so many strides are being made in the realm of plant medicine. Feels like we're going backwards to our history instead of forward in time. But Jonathan, nice to see you. Where are you hailing from today?
California.
From
Some
California?
some beautiful morning in California.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, the birds are singing here too. Hi, Maddie. Where are you today?
Same as usual. I'm in Hertfordshire in England.
Very
It's just sort of early evening here. It's very beautiful, very calm.
early
Yeah.
evening. Lovely. And
Mm.
Brian, where are you from today?
I'm in Paradise, aka Vietnam. Um,
You know, all the places you've lived, you've been calling paradise. So I don't know if you're a good judge of paradise.
well,
The whole
Vietnam is
world is a
also my
paradise, huh?
yeah, well, you could say that. Vietnam is my favorite place I've been.
Oh,
So,
very good. And Justin, you're not traveling right now. Where are you today?
No, I'm in Austin, same as you. I have no idea what it's like outside because I
It's a
so
beautiful day here, and the birds are singing.
I'm on my second cup of coffee, and
Very good.
hopefully it's
nice.
nice out.
I don't know if coffee counts as plant medicine, but
Yes, it does.
caffeine is something I rely upon. So here we go.
I'm drinking this is an energy drink, by the way. It's not a beer. It looks like a
Oh,
beer, but
okay.
it's a monster.
We believe you.
That's pretty sure that's a beer.
Oh
It's a
yeah,
pint of
definitely a
whiskey.
beer. No, just kidding.
Okay, let's see if I can find my slides. Okay, share. Here we go. We'll go quick through these. Present. It's not present mode. There we go. Okay, we're going to go through some plant medicine. I found this person sitting on top of a plant, and I thought that might be representative. So I wanted to share a little bit of the history. I mean, lots of cultures, Ayurveda, Chinese culture, and so on. But just to set the table for our discussion today, there's a 5,000-year-old Sumerian clay slab that offers 12 recipes for drug preparation using 250 different plants, including poppy. There's a 2,500-year-old Chinese book called Pen Sao, written by an emperor who shows preparations for 365 different drugs using dried parts of medicinal plants. There's a papyrus from 1550 with 800 prescriptions. So I guess over time we're making more and more. 700 plant species. Eat pomegranate, castor oil, aloe, onion. So it doesn't have to be psychedelic drugs. Just regular plants can be medicinal. I use a cut of an aloe plant if I have a burn on my finger, and 20 minutes later, I don't have a burn on my finger anymore. So I know these plants are powerful. And then in Homer's epic Iliad and the Odyssey, they reference 63 medicinal plants. So lots of cultures have histories with plant medicine. And then microdosing is a popular topic. There are some states that are looking at passing laws to allow it, and medical university systems that are doing studies about what works and what doesn't work. So it's early days, but I went to a website that I'll share the link in the description. That microdosing seems safe, particularly in a therapeutic environment, but the risks it carries is sometimes where you get the substances, because there's not a good way to measure how potent they are, or if the person supplying them to you is supplying what they really, if they tell you what's really in the compound. And so one example is there were 12 people who were given a blend of mushrooms, and 10 of them were hospitalized, some just from vomiting, but some had seizures. And so it's early days. It's not well regulated. Not that it necessarily needs to be regulated, but use caution if you're exploring microdosing. So it reminds us that different people's bodies operate differently with drugs. The thing I like to remind people of is if you're taking medicine every day, you already have a system that has a layer of drugs, whether it's for an autoimmune or whether it's for mood disorders. If you regularly take some kind of prescription medicine, the microdosing is going on top of that and may interact in ways that other people that you're microdosing with don't have your chemical composition because they're not swallowing the same pills as you every day. And so each person's body chemistry is a little bit different. Basically, they're saying, the microdosing LSD tests showed some improvement greater than a placebo on mood and sleep, pain perception, social cognition, reward response, which triggers the release of dopamine. So this is a growing field, and I think it benefits some, but I advise some caution too. And then here's our memes. So we'll end on kind of a casual note here. LSD makes users lose weight. That makes sense because it's kind of hard to get to the fridge when there's a dragon guarding it. The next one is a good reminder that a whole bag of gummies isn't a good idea. Don't eat a mushroom stem and see colors. Eat the whole bag and see God. So yeah, that's not a good idea either. Here's a woman riding a unicorn, and she says, "Sorry for not texting back. I forgot I was real." And then this last one is somebody's head kind of coming apart. And it said that wasn't a microdose. So we're done sharing. Okay, so we've given some thoughts and some background to plant medicine, and I'd like to start with Justin, if you don't mind sharing what your experience was, what prompted you, and how your results were. Thanks for sharing today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see everyone. Well, the first time I ever did psychedelics, I wish was in a different context. I grew up in an environment where my dad gave me drugs and alcohol from a very young age. So the first time I did any psychedelics, it was LSD, and I think I was 12. My dad thought it would be fun to give it to my friend and I. And so we ended up running naked through an orange grove out in the middle of nowhere, and we started throwing these grapefruits at cars that were like this big. And so it was yeah, it wasn't the greatest experience. It was kind of funny, but I had no context for medicinal purposes, and I didn't really start doing shrooms until maybe 4 years ago.
Mhm.
I like on a serious level, I had them at parties, but it was mixed with so many things. It just, you kind of need to isolate something to really understand it. And I kept doing it and kind of almost started to prefer it over weed. Weed was kind of my escape. I had been going through quite a few things in my personal life, and um, I had read a study that said that psilocybins had a quicker effect than SSRIs. Like they can kind of hit your system quicker, and over time they level out. And so if someone was in a really bad situation, psilocybins would probably be more appropriate to take than even SSRI. So at any rate, when I realized that it was actual plant medicine was when I had a friend say, try taking this medicine while playing this playlist on Spotify. and and so I really didn't get a lot of visuals. I got like the wavy lines around people's faces. I've taken massive doses and I've never had big, strong visuals. I have a pretty high tolerance, I guess. But ended up doing that. I kind of got under a blanket, did the playlist my friend told me about. And I'm not trying to be graphic, but I was literally reborn out of a cervix on what do you call it? Golden teachers. And so it's kind of embarrassing and funny at the same time. But that was the most intense mushroom experience I had. But it was like all this light and you could see the membranes and all this stuff. But I was just sitting there like this, like a bobsledder, somebody that's, going down the track. And I was like, this is cool. This is lit. And but that was the first time I realized that it was medicine. I started crying and having this release, but it wasn't this depressive crying. It was kind of like
Dramatic. Mm-hmm.
it was weird. It was like I was getting my oil changed, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know why I needed to cry, but for some reason I did. And when I was done with the trip, it was just like, wow. It was like I just got out of the office with the chiropractor. It was great. And so after that, I went to Brazil for about 8 months, and my nervous system was pretty trashed. I never knew that your nervous system could feel normal. I was stuck in fight or flight my entire life. Without getting into a ton of detail, I just went through about some of the worst things you can as a youth, and so I had heard that a lot of uh, you know military operators that experienced pretty severe PTSD turned to ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, if these tough sons of bitches, if they can go do that and still keep their man card, I was like, I can do that. I can always, if somebody makes fun of me, I can always point at them and go like, well, hey, they did it. And so um, I had went to Brazil for almost 8 months, and this girl I had been seeing had gone to this place in Peru, and she said, "You really need to go. You really need to try it." And it was an afterthought, and so I paid for it and everything, and I had no expectations of it. I forgot that I even paid for it. I didn't do the diet before I went. I didn't do anything. And so I showed up, and when I went there, it was kind of like a Portlandia episode. I didn't feel like I was gonna get along with any of these people. Like, the moment they come on board, everything's about like UFOs and energy and all this kind of shit. And I just don't fit in. And so anyway, long story short, I didn't take it nearly serious as I should have. And it ever since I've done those 3 ceremonies in Peru, I've been completely free of fight or flight response. And we're talking, I think, 8 months. And my entire life, my nervous system has been stuck in fight or flight. I've been 8 months free. So
That's amazing.
Hmm. So you would recommend it if someone was in a similar circumstance?
yeah, it really depends. I think it's contextual. There were people there that didn't do so well with it, and I couldn't tell you what the criteria is. I would say, if I'm a very laid back person, and so if something isn't going according to plan, I know how to kind of surf it. I know how to kind of ride the wave.
Mhm.
So I would, to the best of my knowledge, I would say if somebody can relax and kind of go with it, I think they're probably a better candidate.
Mhm.
But that's a tough one. I think maybe Maddie probably can answer that better. But I think it's kind of a risk reward. I think the reward is so great that it's potentially worth the risk. And the risk when you go to these places, you're surrounded by medical professionals.
Tell us
And
a little bit about the place, because it's a legit facility, 30 years, the mountains of Peru, honestly.
yeah, let me see if I can find it real quick. I'm really bad with
Because people that are doing ayahuasca ceremonies in their backyard, it may not be the same thing.
yeah, it's called Etnicas, and it's about 30 minutes outside of Cusco, Peru.
Mm.
And at the time, it was $1,000 for a week. And this place looked like the Shire from Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
It's all powered by a river. All the electricity they get is powered by a river.
Mm.
You can't bring any kind of chemical-based soaps or shampoos or anything. Your first day, you're fasting. The entire day, you're fasting. The next day, you're only allowed a little bit of fruit in the morning.
Mhm.
And then you go
There's
right back to the
famous nausea with ayahuasca, right? So are they trying to clean people's systems out, or?
yeah, they don't want they
It's
don't
not
want
nausea. It's something different than nausea. Nausea is
Okay,
different.
well, they're purging food.
Purge, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you don't want 20 people purging Papa John's pizza in an enclosed space. you know. that's 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 gonna create more PTSD. But yeah, so plus I think the medicine interacts with your body so differently. So from what I was told, and two, and I don't want to take up too much time, when I first took it, there were people that were getting experiences immediately. I had to drink a giant coffee mug. I had to do the max dose. And I didn't really get much. I went back to my room and I fell asleep. And this lady was at the bottom I had this dream of a lady at the edge of a bridge. And without saying words, she just communicated to me that if once my body is purged, then she can communicate with me, then she can heal. So
That was a lady ayahuasca herself.
yeah. Yeah, so and so I proceeded to have like Ridley Scott, Alien 1 through 3, violent diarrhea
Purging.
next week. I didn't throw up at all, but oh my God. Yeah, it was like Taco Bell meets Inception. I mean, it was terrible, but your body feels so clean.
Mm.
It's pretty incredible. But yeah, so what happened, and I'll let it go after this. I They told me that you could feel tapping sometimes in areas. Like if you feel a lot of tapping, maybe in a particular area, you might want to go home and get a CT scan because it might be pointing out that you have like cancer or abnormalities or something. Because it kind of scans your body, and I'm just being honest. At first, I was like, that sounds a little like bullshit, but anyway, it was scanning, and it literally scanned my nervous system. I felt tapping from the base of my spine all the way to the top of my head, and I fell asleep. Well, sorry, reverse a little bit. So this was on the third ceremony, which was like Friday or Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, we get in there, and there are these two twin female shamans that are maybe in their 50s. And the singing was so distracting to me that I wondered if I had made a mistake coming here.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh my God, dude, my ADD was just in hyperdrive. I couldn't focus on anything. And by the third ceremony, I had fallen asleep, and I felt all this tapping from the base of my spine all the way to the top of my head. And I just felt this crazy cradling, like mother love. It was really weird. and it felt like my nervous system was being stitched back together. And I kind of I'm just almost giddy. It just felt so incredible. I looked down at the base of the bed, and one of those shaman lady uh, was singing, and whatever it was so weird. And I'm a very skeptical person. I'm not a typical spiritual person, as you guys know. And so I look at the foot of the bed, and one of those women is singing, and it was the craziest feeling. It literally felt like she was interacting with the medicine.
Mhm, mhm.
And it was at the exact time that I felt the healing happen. So I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to give such a long response,
No,
but
no, it's really good to have people
Yeah,
hear about
it's a
that.
good answer,
So,
man.
Maddie, can we turn over to you and you could share your experiences and feedback that you may have on Justin, since you're a shaman yourself,
Mm,
have deep knowledge of this, where we're on the
mhm,
outside looking in. Well, of
mhm,
course, Justin was inside looking out in
mhm.
Peru. The rest of us are on the outside looking in.
Yeah, it was lovely to hear some of that stuff. And people do have, you know, all unique experiences. But the shamans know exactly what they're doing, and they do interact with the medicine. And also that the rules are different where it comes to ayahuasca. The amount that you take doesn't mean that because you have more, you're going to have a more intense journey. You could have a small, tiny amount and have an absolutely unbelievable journey. It's where you're at. So let's backtrack somewhat, because plant medicines themselves, really, they are abused at the moment, just completely abused. Um, and that goes for many of the so-called shamanic communities as well. They're just abusing these medicines, abusing the plants, and where what was it you said at the beginning there? You were talking about the physiology of people's bodies, and how people's bodies interact. Well, actually, the truth is that we should be looking at, what is your life like? How don't want to use the word spiritual, but we use it anyway for lack of a better word. But
Mhm,
how spiritually advanced are you? How spiritually aware are you? Where are you in your healing journey? How damaged are you? How much have you done? These are the things that we need to look at before we move into plant medicine,
mhm,
because these are the things that are going to dictate or direct the journey that you're going to have. There's a friend of mine, and she's had a very, very difficult life. And I sat with her once, and we did 2 grams of mushrooms each. There are our own local ones, and she was with me, and all I did was tell her jokes all night long, and dressed up in stupid things, and just acted like a complete fool. And she laughed her ass off for the whole evening, and her depression was gone for months after that.
mhm,
But she had a shaman with her there in that room that was making that experience a signature frequency match for her unique healing and her unique frequency.
mhm,
A few months later, she was out drinking with some friends, and then they got some mushrooms, and they gave her a dose of mushrooms, and she went into a complete hell realm. And she spent the whole night climbing the walls trying to get out of this place, and everybody panicking, trying to protect her. So, there's nothing wrong. It wasn't the mushrooms that did that. It was the environment. It was the people around, because, these are not recreational drugs. Even some recreational drugs like MDMA, for instance. MDMA is a heart opener. It has exactly the same chemical compound as cacao. So it
mhm,
opens up the heart space. That's why people get all lovey-dovey and start to tell each other how much they love each other, and all that happens. And that utilized, even though it's not directly a plant medicine, but that utilized in the right environment, can bring huge healing to people that have been through trauma and things like that. So it comes down to that, really. It's where you're at in your life. Let's say somebody has taken a lot of antidepressants in their life. They should wait almost a decade before they do any form of plant medicine.
mhm,
Okay, because there's so many different factors to this. Recreational use of mushrooms is just missing the point, because much like Justin said there, and it, really, I was so happy that he said it, that he had a rebirth experience, but he had no fucking idea what he was doing.
No
Okay.
context.
That's a
No
very, very important part of that journey, because he had no context for what he was experiencing.
context.
Now, you know, that's what this is all about. Some people will still have these experiences, but they don't know what they're actually going through, and so therefore they've had an experience that they're not able to actually then process and assimilate. You know, it
Integrity.
becomes something like, well, that was wacky and wild, wasn't it? Or actually, no, brother, you had an ex very, very expansive experience of rebirth that you unfortunately were unable to process and understand. And I don't mean that just for Justin. I mean that for so many other different people.
Mhm.
You know, so it just goes to show how we are abusing these medicines, and it's us that's doing it, not the plant medicines themselves.
Mhm.
Um, Now that can be said as well for the ayahuasca community. Um, I hear so many people who put so much, and it sounds like the place that you went to was a very, very good place. You know, they've clearly are vetting their shamans well, and they've been doing it long enough to know what they're at.
Mhm.
But there are so many different people out there, and I hear people say, "Oh, well, this shaman said this for me from Peru, or this shaman over here said this to me," and I said, "Well, that's just bullshit."
Mhm.
It's just because a shaman said it doesn't give it any validity at all. Anybody can you know can call themselves a shaman. There's no actual real process of vetting for this. You know, there are
Yeah, what I
official
liked about
qualifications, right?
what I liked about them was they really didn't prescribe any sort of uh, philosophy around anything.
Mhm.
So it was how to just open up to the Aya experience.
Yeah.
And the only thing they really said was don't come into it with expectations, don't have a list of things that you're going to work through.
Yeah,
Just don't resist what you're being shown. That was
yeah.
kind of it. But they had no philosophy really to
Mhm.
speak of. There's just openness.
And now the other thing is, if we go now into correct usage of plant medicines, and this can be for cannabis, this can be for, you know, and there are many different, of course, there's never just one size fits all.
Mhm.
And there's nothing in the world that is one size fits all. Okay.
Mhm.
There's no experience we can talk about in the world that's the same for everybody. And so there are some plant medicines that can be used, such as cannabis, for physical ailments. And we all know about this, the magical healing powers of cannabis on the central nervous system, people who have these degenerative brain diseases and things like that, Parkinson's and so forth, and how effective cannabis is on those.
Mhm.
But when we go into the realms of spirituality and self-development, and we begin to talk about plant medicines, you must have, or you need to have some form of context, like we were talking about. So plant medicines are there to complement your own evolutionary journey. They're there to complement your evolutionary journey. They are not the be all end all of it. And there are so many people out there who they just do 100 ayahuasca journeys, you know, or I've done 150 medicine journeys. And
Mhm.
that's what they'll do. And they'll go back to life and just be the same person and wait until the medicine wears off and then go and do another one. You know, there was a guy somewhere in South America who's an English guy, I believe, and he had such a profound medicine journey that he moved over to Peru, left his family, and began taking ayahuasca every day, and ended up murdering the shaman, shot the shaman and killed the shaman. Then the whole village came out and then dragged him through the forest and murdered him as well. So you know, these plants, they're not going to save you in any way, shape, or form. They're there as equal partners and co-creators in this experience of life.
Mhm.
They're there to assist us, but we can absolutely abuse and use them in the wrong way.
Mhm.
So if we have a, a daily practice, and whatever that looks like for you, and whatever it is that you're choosing to
Prayer,
do
meditation. Mhm.
exactly all those things, then plant medicines can help us to break through into or break through certain areas of stagnation or I want to say the word validation, but it's not quite the right word. Just greater experiences that are outside of our usual everyday experience. And it doesn't really take huge doses to do this.
Mhm.
But then the other thing, and this is where you heard Justin there talk about his early experiences with plant medicines, uh, as opposed to his more recent experiences.
As an adult.
And he
Mhm.
used a very important word there, right? Ceremony.
Mhm.
Okay, ceremony is such an important word. And this is where we begin to show true responsibility with the plant medicines. You can smoke cannabis and listen to Pink Floyd and do a painting and have a great old time.
Mhm.
But if you were to consume cannabis in whatever way you consume it in a ceremonial fashion in front of a fire with full ceremonial rites,
Mhm.
making offerings, consuming the medicine in a sacred way, then you are going to gain real insight and depth and wisdom from that medicine. It's a very, very different frequency because you're showing your, excuse me, you're showing your due diligence and your respect,
Mhm.
and you are making it, this is not a this is not a casual experience. This is not done for fun. This is,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that you have to be there with a serious face and you can't smile or
Mhm.
enjoy the process, but
Mhm.
that's not what it's about. This is not about enjoying the process. This is done for a specific reason, even if you don't have an actual specific reason, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I mean that we can open this up. I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours and hours. But
It
plant
reminds me
medicines,
of, yeah, it reminds me of, and then I know Brian has some questions, Jonathan too, that some Native American tribes had a peyote ceremony
peyote cactus, yes,
as young men were
mescaline.
entering into adulthood. But it was very programmed. There was a timing for it. There were, the medicine man in the tribe would take somebody through this, and they would kind of do a walkabout and discover who their spirit animal was and what kind of man they were going to be. So it was an orchestrated contextual experience that used plant medicine. So I think it's like that, the deliberateness and then the history of the people. So doing these things on your own is usually not a good idea, but I just wanted to mention that we've seen these things through history, and I think they have a place in our modern day, but maybe context for them.
One of the most what we're telling, if we're going to tell medicine stories, one of the scariest plant medicines I've ever done. I'm not saying drugs here because in my life I've done plenty of recreational drugs as well.
Mhm.
A whole life in that kind of thing,
Mhm.
a whole past life you could say. But as far as plant medicines go, I did iboga, and that comes from Gabon in Africa, from the Bwiti tribe, which
Mhm.
is an alkaloid that comes from a bark of a tree,
Mhm.
a plant. It's like a shrub actually,
Mhm.
much like cocaine, but instead
Mhm.
of you can still consume the leaves, but the highest quantities of alkaloid are in the pith in between the bark and the inner
Mhm.
parts of the
The
tree, the
stem.
bush,
Mhm.
um, and um, and that was the closest I think I've ever come to actually dying. And it was a 2-day trip, and I did that one on my own as well. And that was that was something else. They begin to give that to heroin addicts and people like that because um, they get to experience everybody they've ever wronged from their perspective.
Oh.
So they go into the consciousnesses of the people that they've stolen from or that they've abused or whatever's happened, actually experience what they did to those people from that person's consciousness.
Mhm.
How powerful that is. And that for me was a very deep and dark
Mhm.
medicine that I don't think I would be happy to do again.
Mhm.
But there are so many different types and different experiences, and even me in my youth, even though I was spiritually progressed, I didn't have the right questions to ask of the plant medicines.
Mhm.
Therefore, it was awry and it was chaotic,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that didn't serve me. There are so many different parts of some of those journeys that do serve me. But I was missing that structure and that discipline, which is very,
Oh,
very important.
I think Brian, you have some questions?
I don't know about questions.
Thoughts? Feedback?
I mean, there's been a lot of great information from Maddie and Justin here. I love trip reports. Maybe that's not a reverential enough word, but I like to hear people's
From the
experiences.
70s, trip reports from LSD in the 70s.
Yeah, but I'll get into I have some quotes here from some psychedelic philosophers here, like Terence McKenna. Do you know Terence McKenna,
Of
Maddie?
course, he was a great man. Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So he has a quote. He says, "What we call reality is nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced hallucination. And I, yeah, and I do think there's a lot of truth to that. Um, there's a lot of things we assume as a society, just because we all speak the same language, we all have the same concepts, we have very similar routines, we have similar experiences, then we think that that's reality. But I think plant medicines are really good at breaking that down and showing no, there's all kinds of other different realities that you guys are not talking about in society. I think that's a big function of psychedelics or plant medicines, and Terence McKenna was big on that.
Mm.
Um, I have another quote from him, and he says, "Nature is not mute; it is man who is deaf."
Yes, I couldn't agree
So,
more.
yeah, so maybe things like mushrooms, things like ayahuasca, that's one of nature's ways of communicating with us. I mean, it doesn't speak English to us, but if we go and explore these plant medicines, we start to open up to different forms of communication,
And this
not
is why we're
just,
abusing them, Brian. This is why we're abusing them,
okay.
okay? Because we're oh so important as human beings, because we are the ones that are consuming them, right? Oh, I did mushrooms. No, mushrooms did you, fella. It's a
Yeah,
very completely different story, okay? You look from a different
yeah,
way. You know, it's
yeah,
they are a consciousness. And you
yeah,
see this with ayahuasca. You've got Lady Ayahuasca. With DMT, there's most definitely a consciousness. The Iboga I told you about, Lady Iboga, she was with me the whole way through that journey, and she was vicious at points, you know,
yeah,
and they are consciousnesses in their own right. And this is a deeper language, a greater language. They are multidimensional beings. Some of
mhm,
these plant medicines exist on a much higher dimensional frequency and plane than we do ourselves,
Hmm.
you know, and so that's what he's talking about there. It's it's a language that not so much a language, another experience, another connection. The plant kingdom's all around us, and we see it the way that we do, and we think of pharmacopoeials and things like this, and the way that, you know, plants can function within our physical bodies and in the world around us. But there is a spiritual existence to everything, a spiritual plane. Everything has its own, you know, spiritual function as well. Like mugwort. Mugwort is a dreaming plant. And that's something that I plant all around my property to hold space here in the dream world.
Hmm.
There are many, many different ways that you can use and utilize these plants. Consumption is just one of them, but you can learn their language. The interesting thing is when you, if you've got someone like yourself, Myrna, who's never done any form of kind of, let's say, acid or anything like trippy,
Mm-mm.
then it's absolutely impossible for anybody to relate to you what the experience is.
Yeah. Hear
Absolutely
the
impossible.
descriptions. I imagine the picture that they're painting, but yes, I haven't had the experience myself.
That young lady I told you about that I gave the mushrooms to and we went through that experience, she she'd done plenty of other sorts of you know, chemicals and drugs and things like that in her time. And um, one of the funniest things that happened was, you know, she was saying, "It's not working. We should do more." And I said, "You don't understand how these things work. You know what we've done there, what we consume there. It's impossible for it not to affect us. You have to just trust me on this."
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
in the end, I caved in. I said, "Okay, let's do what we've got." So we did everything, and because I didn't have a great deal. But you know, sometimes as a shaman, you have to teach these lessons to people as well. Okay, then we're going to do more. Okay, we'll see how you feel when this kicks in. And you know, there wasn't enough to be harmful, and I was there. And then as it came in, she did the funniest thing. She went, "Oh, so this is tripping," and you know, and then you'll hear people. I've heard people say things like, "Oh, look, everyone just carries on." And that's in a statement that you understand that that means somebody's in that altered consciousness because it's so reality altering that you can't understand how the other people in the world are just going on with their lives when you're going through this experience.
You're in a separate reality now.
Yeah,
And you
absolutely.
see their reality is not the same as yours.
Absolutely. It's something that you just cannot describe. It has to be experienced. It's an experiential thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. And mushrooms are beautiful. There are times where I've done mushrooms. Like last time I got some Liberty caps, which are our native mushrooms here, and they're
Mhm.
very, very strong, very small, but very strong. Um, and I didn't realize, because I was going by the big psilocybin kind of like golden teachers kind of dosage, that, if you did like a gram, it's a mild, mild experience. And so I was going to a sauna, and I decided to take a gram of these just to test out the level of them, but actually a gram turned out to be a very high dose.
Mm,
And so I got, it was one of those mistakes there, one of those things where I got myself caught out. So
mm,
the sauna was interesting. And then when I got out of there and I just sat on the field, I could just feel the heartbeat of the earth. And
mm,
there's a moment of clarity where you just go silent, and I could just feel the energy running through everything. And you
mm,
have these moments of just clarity where the ego just completely shuts down,
mm.
and you just are. You're just in that experience, and you're in a part of nature, and nature is a part of you, because the chatter of the world and the obscurity of it is silenced, even if it's just for a moment. Can be
Jonathan, I want to
profound.
invite you in. Brian and I know about a book. It's not in print anymore. A little thin volume called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. And it was a young man in his 20s, and he decided he was going to hack the system. He was going to do a shortcut to enlightenment. So he was going to do some LSD. And in the 70s, it was widely available. Everybody was trying it in college campuses, and Terence McKenna was a professor at Berkeley, encouraging this. And so he had enlightenment experiences, the kind of things that Maddie and Justin have described, instead of doing the rigorous sort of meditation practices or other spiritual development things that take you to that place. And he said in the book he did not recommend doing the hack with LSD. The thing that it did for him was it showed him what was possible, but with LSD, it was not lasting. He hadn't achieved it, he'd visited it. But that was important for him to know there was a place to visit. This did exist. And then he got down to the rigorous work of doing the internal work. But for him, he needed to step through the door and see it was there, and then earn his way through the door in the regular routines. But you hear things about perfect peace, regulated nervous system, understanding there's more to the world than my field of vision every day shows me. Do you have any thoughts about this in terms of religious practice?
And just real quick, also, Jonathan, I want to say, if you want to talk about tobacco or alcohol or, cocaine or whatever else, it doesn't have to be necessarily like plant medicines or psychedelics. You can talk about if any of those things have been medicinal for you, or positive or negative, or,
Yeah.
whatever you want to share.
Yeah. So let me start with saying that I'm not an expert by any means when it
No, no.
comes to plants and medicines, but I have had some experiences. Uh, Again, like this, the shaman and Justin were saying, um, some of them were not spiritual by any means, and some
No,
of them have been
recreational. Mm-hmm.
recreational. Like I remember the very, very first time, like the first time that I had mushrooms, all of my friends, they were saying, "Oh, no, I don't mess with that stuff. Mushrooms, no." I'm like, "You smoke weed all day." Like I cannot even handle the puff and you smoke weed all day. That's too much, man. And they were saying, I remember telling me like, if you have mushrooms, you cannot have sex because you're gonna die. And then he said like, I'm like, no, that's not how it works. So what is the first thing that I did when I had the mushrooms? I had to have sex, and it was one of the greatest times that I've had. Um, so
Nice.
that was a while ago. So I realized like I actually like them. There's something in common. Every plant that I've tried, including like teas, everything,
Mm-hmm.
they do take like the ego. It's like they put it aside for you. So I think that all plants share that in common. They introduce you to like not to be so like thinking about yourself. It opens up a whole lots of possibilities. So then, anyways, I tried some other stuff, but something became very clear, which I believe it relates to what the doctor wrote for like I don't know if it was a doctor who wrote the book
Yeah,
you were talking
yeah,
about, Myrna.
yeah.
Which was, this is not sustainable. I needed to find a way so that I don't have to be like either high or under the influence of a mushroom. 'Cause
Mhm.
I like to drive too,
Yeah.
on a motorbike with a mushroom is not a great idea. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so in my search, I'm pretty sure that that was part of it. In the search of, what is possible because the plant introduces you
Mhm.
to it. But then I was like, uh, I'm always that kind of human that I'm like, there must be a different way. So that's how I ended up in India,
Mhm.
living inside of an ashram
Mhm.
with a rigorous, under a rigorous schedule, like waking up at 3:30 in the
Mhm.
morning and going to sleep at 11,
Mhm.
and then doing practices all day, like literally all day.
Mhm.
And then after some time, I was actually experiencing kind of like the same level, if not sometimes higher levels of spiritual, like kind of like taking a mushroom in a way, actually. But I
Mhm.
had to work my ass off just to get the high. It's not like you take the mushroom or like even like the cigarette, for example. You take a
Mhm.
cigarette, which I love tobacco, or like a cigar. You light up the cigar. You go, feels so great. You didn't have to do shit. You just going like this, and you're just already in another
Mhm.
level. And then I learned that it is possible to achieve like the same thing or even higher. But then to do that, it takes you like 30 minutes. So it's like 30 minutes of like combination between meditation and
Mhm.
also some like physical exercises. So it's like, I think it's at the end of the day, it's great to have options. So
Mhm.
for me personally, I like having options. So if I have the option to do or achieve that state without having to be a slave to a plant, because
Mhm.
I know some people they get like enslaved and if they don't have it,
Mhm.
they cannot function.
Mhm.
Which I understand how easy it can be ending up like that. Um, but yeah, definitely there is this flower of which I was talking to Brian the other day.
Hmm.
Um, It's called Blue Lotus flower. I was doing some research and it seems like it is, um, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is the highest vibration flower that exists. Like
Blue
this
lotus, it's called, huh?
Blue Lotus flower, it's supposed to be a kind of flower that when it comes to vibrational um, stuff, it is like on the highest level of vibration, which kind of makes sense because when I was living in the ashram, there was something about lotus that I will be drawn to meditate on those areas where the lotus were, which kind of makes sense.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I was experimenting with this plant actually, and then I was mixing it with other plants, and I came up with two greatest mixes, which
And
I
you,
I
you
enjoy.
drink it as a tea, you brew it as a tea, or?
As a tea,
Mhm.
one of them is like for sleep. So I combined Blue Lotus with some. I asked the lady. There's this old lady at the tea shop, and then I asked her just what are the top three plants for sleep, and then she said this one, this one, this one. I said okay, I want those, and then and then I asked her like, have you ever had Blue Lotus tea combined with these plants? She said no, never. I'm like, have you ever smoked Blue Lotus? She's like, I didn't even know it can be smoked. I'm like, yes, it can, and it's delicious. You should try it. Just don't abuse it. Um,
Mhm.
so then I created that blend, and it did knock me the fuck out. So I was like, okay, this works. So whoever that has problems like sleeping, I'm like, this is a great alternative instead of like NyQuil, like
Yeah.
those kinds of things. So
Mhm.
that is a great alternative. However, even that, I would still think, for example, you cannot get addicted to having to drink the tea to fall asleep every time. It is better if you learn like by
And
yourself,
Yes.
yeah, manage
which is something,
in your
yeah,
life. Yeah.
which is something that can be actually achieved through hypnosis,
Mhm.
actually. But to start, it's a great start. I mean,
You know, what's wonderful about what Maddie said about ceremony, and as you described, time in the ashram at Isha, that the context of your life, if you're regulating your nervous system because you have some discipline around meditation or prayer, exercise, what food you're eating, you're managing the anxiety level. Now you're not having to turn to necessarily plant medicines or other drugs to escape your life. You're
mhm,
regulating a perfectly workable life. You're regulating a happy life. And you do that repeatedly. You have simple methods to do it repeatedly with or without, reliant upon some kind of medicine. So some people have addictive personalities, others can just take it or leave it, recreationally. And so knowing yourself, know thyself, the first commandment, know
yes.
thyself. And so, yeah, this has been an interesting discussion. Brian, are there other things you wanted to mention? And then we'll
Oh
have
yeah.
our thoughts.
Yeah, there's a lot more stuff I can do. I'll try not to take too long, I guess, here. Um, so I did some Terence McKenna quotes. So one thing that's interesting is Terence McKenna was part of the hippie movement in the 60s,
Yeah,
Mm,
the free
professor at
love,
Berkeley.
psychedelics movement. And a lot of those people believed that psychedelics were going to revolutionize society.
Mhm,
And I watched a discussion that I
mhm,
showed you, Mom, of him talking with Ram Dass.
mhm,
And he was like, we all thought everyone was going to start taking LSD, everyone would start doing mushrooms,
mhm,
and everything would change.
mhm.
Like people would stop going to their jobs.
The
We would all
Vietnam
hang
War
out
would
in like,
end, peace would
yeah,
reign around
the
the
war
planet.
machine would stop. There'd be no more wars. It
Mhm,
would just be love between humans. And he's like, it didn't happen. But
mhm,
they actually really thought that was going to revolutionize everything. So
mhm,
one interesting question is, why didn't that revolutionize everything? And then a second question is, if that doesn't revolutionize human consciousness effectively enough, then what does? And this connects to Sadhguru, like Sadhguru and like the yogis would argue only like meditation practices, those kind of things are going to truly transform
mhm,
everyone. I think plant medicines are a tool, but
mhm,
it's they kind of tried that in the 60s
mhm,
and it actually didn't revolutionize everything. It
mhm,
had an
And also,
impact.
you cannot make a revolution. It sounds great on theory, but the practice is you think you're going to revolutionize, but you cannot because most plants they are great, and I've had them, but like they're going to put you in such a pleasant state without you having to do anything to achieve that state that
Yeah.
you don't want to like revolutionize anything. You just want to lay down on the couch.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we
That's a
find
good
that
point.
we find that with cannabis, with weed, that there's some people that are so enamored, they smoke all day, they don't work, they play video games, they live on Doritos and Mountain Dew, and
Mm,
they've lost a drive to have some other kind of life. They're perfectly
Mhm.
happy on the couch playing video games, high most of the time. And so for some people, is that the life that's worth living? Were you meant for more? I would argue that you were meant for more. And I think people go through stages outside of a traumatic experience, or you've tried things and they're not working. You're taking a break from a livable life. If you're going to spend months on end, smoking dope and playing video games. But there's a more constructive way, a more fulfilling, rewarding way to live. But it's so enticing to just be in a haze and laughing with your friends and calling that a life. And some people never are susceptible to that. Others are. So,
I think that is a great point because of the new times, especially like for example, California. Here the weed there's stores like 7-Elevens, but like
yeah.
they're
Colorado,
called
same.
yeah, they're called
That's,
like dispensaries. And
mm,
I'm like, I remember even just like the comfort, like because when I was younger, when I had to buy weed, when I was like living in Mexico, for example, you have to go to this shady extremely dangerous neighborhood that you might be robbed. Probably I got robbed like at least twice. Like you were risking your life just to get like some weed. That's how it was. And now it's even that factor is taken like away. So you didn't have to go through the whole experience just to get like the plant itself. So it loses it correlates to what Matthew and Justin were talking about, that it misses like the whole point, like the whole lesson. It's been missing. So I do believe that plants are great, but and then when Matthew was saying like abuse, I imagine someone like fucking abusing a plant.
You know, Brian, you
Getting on the extract.
Yeah, you described being on a rooftop in Thailand, and it was a restaurant, and from the same bartender, you could get a joint and a beer.
Yeah,
And
that's it.
it's legal there. So
Yeah.
people would sit at a table and they'd light up and they'd have a drink, and it's just recreational, like a glass of wine with
Well,
your meal. So there are places that are kind of embracing weed as calmly recreational, like a cigarette, like a beer, like a glass of wine.
Oh, and I think it's totally fine. And I will actually, I do not disagree. Actually, I will promote those places because there is a place for everything. And if they exist, that's totally like, that's great. I'm sure I will visit one of them for sure. But the thing is that when there's everything has consequences. So, like for example, this new generation of young kids, even like males and females, that they're growing up. And let's say, for example, everything has consequences. So if you choose to just like smoke weed all day and then not having any aspirations and playing video games, which I have done in the past, but we know they don't take you anywhere. If you choose that, even if it's for some period of time, you're going to end up in a pretty bad situation because yes, you're living in La La Land and we know it's pleasant, but when you come back to this world, which you have to, that's when shit goes wrong because they don't have any skills, tools to go through life without. Now, before there was plans, now they have to jump into like more hardcore medication because they cannot control their monkey mind going everywhere. Oh, I have HTSD, PTSD, all these, all the DDs, double Ds.
Yeah,
You know,
that's cool, man.
I think we've had a really good discussion today. Can we share some final thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you? So Justin is a contributor. He doesn't work as a coach. And he's made our site so beautiful as this kind of art director, creative director for Alive Design. Maddie's information is on the About page, and his website will be listed in the description, newera.org.uk. But Jonathan, why don't you tell us how to get a hold of you? And I'll be putting the link to your coaching page in our description as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. You can find me on alivedesign.org. Also on Instagram, it's Jonathan R Coaching. Via email, jonathanrcoaching@gmail.com. And also on TikTok, it's the same, Jonathan R Coaching, which is growing, getting there. So yeah.
Did you have a final thought? Because I just took you right in to tell us how to find you, or are we good?
Final thought. Yeah, I will encourage humans to always go beyond their peers. So if they are afraid of a plant, they should try it. And that's all I have to say.
Oh, good.
Don't get fixed on it. But
Don't be afraid of it.
What's the word?
Yeah,
Don't be afraid.
be cautious, but don't be afraid. So, Brian, do you have final thoughts on how to get hold of you?
Yeah, there's a lot I haven't really had a chance to get into. Let me kind of go through some of this stuff real quick. I'll just add it in
Sure.
so that it's in the video. So let me do a quote from Aldous Huxley. Okay, and he was another psychedelic type writer, philosopher. He said there are things known and there are things unknown, and in between there are doors of perception. And that was kind of one of his famous phrases, is doors of perception, because he felt that taking psychedelics opened up a lot of different dimensions of consciousness that he became aware of that he was totally unaware of before. And I do think some people need to really just see something dramatic and then they become more spiritual. I mean, that happened with Ram Dass. The whole reason he became a big yogi and a very
Mhm.
deep advanced yogi is from LSD.
That's where
It
he
just,
started. Mhm,
yeah, that made him realize, oh, other dimensions do exist.
mhm,
And only after that is when he got into meditation and, that kind of stuff. So some people need something to kind of like shake them out of our basic normal reality here. Because there's people who just live and die in this just basic reality. They never see anything beyond career,
mhm,
wife, kids, family, like house, car. That's kind of
mhm,
that's reality to them. Although
mhm,
there's a lot of other dimensions, but um I'll do a Timothy Leary quote. He was a famous guy for big on acid. Um he said he learned and he was like a professor at Harvard, I think, and studied there a long time. He said he learned more in 5 hours on mushrooms than 15 years of academic study at like prestigious universities like Harvard in the US. So some people, it affects them that profoundly. There's other people who do mushrooms and they just fuck around and they don't get anything profound out of it. Like they're just like, okay, we tripped, we had fun, we messed around, and like there's no depth.
mhm.
There's no like they don't get a profoundness out of the
They get a
experience. But
recreational experience, and that's the context they're taking it in. Mhm,
for some people, it's really profound and life changing though, and then they go off in a whole different direction with it. Like I've heard stories of that with ayahuasca. There's like lawyers who have gone down to Peru or
mhm,
wherever and done ayahuasca, and then they're like, no, I'm quitting my job. I'm just gonna be a teacher now. I'm gonna like teach kids. I want to
mhm,
get back. Like some
mhm.
people, it really changes them.
They get a hard
So
reset. Yeah.
yeah, that is something you have to be aware of, especially if you're gonna do high doses.
Mhm,
It might completely reset you or transform you. Sometimes that happens.
mhm,
So it's good to be aware of that. On small doses, that's not going to really happen. But if
mhm,
you're going to do big doses, that it
mhm.
can really change you. That could happen. So um, I want to talk about another really important idea that Terence McKenna basically put forward, which is that one concept is that the things you see on psychedelics are not hallucinations. Like it's not necessarily just stuff produced by your brain. He was arguing that you're meeting real beings from real other dimensions. And he said the way he knew that is he had conversations with beings while he was on DMT, and they were spitting out paragraphs like of coherent thoughts. And he was like, the things they were telling me are things that I would never think.
Mhm.
I would never, ever, ever come up with this. This is like completely alien to anything I
It's
would
from
ever think of.
someplace else, not
But
internal.
it was coherent. Like it
Mhm,
made sense, but it's like
mhm,
he's like, that's how I know it's not just my brain
mhm,
producing this. This is stuff I would have never thought of
mhm,
that's being
I
communicated to me.
I agree. I've had those experiences, so it's like downloading. It's like, that's when it gets scary sometimes. That's how I ended up in India because I was like, "Am I fucking crazy?"
mhm,
And then you look
Yeah.
around and nobody around you,
mhm,
they don't know. So
mhm.
I was like, it's like downloading. It's like being on Wi-Fi and being a match to those,
Yes. Where
hubs.
does this
Yes.
new
It's like,
signal come from? Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So you agree. And in the experience of it, I wouldn't really say I've had this experience, although I've done psychedelics, but I know that people feel like they're really talking to a different entity. That is the feeling of it. Like it feels like this is not a hallucination. This is a real being.
Mhm.
isn't it
Um,
how like the prophets write down like their word of like each god they
yeah,
have different people, but they download like oh these guys they're just
it's like
writing like
channeling. It's like channeling. Yeah, a lot of the prophets wrote down this stuff. There's modern day channels and stuff too.
Mhm.
So another interesting thing is Maddie talked about Lady Ayahuasca, and he was saying that the spirit that Justin met
Mhm.
was Lady Ayahuasca. That's another thing that kind of confirms that you're actually seeing real beings in another real dimension,
Mhm.
is that people who do the same drug in different parts of the world
Mhm.
who have not communicated with each other, they
Mhm.
see the same beings.
Mhm. Mhm.
How is everybody always seeing Lady Ayahuasca
Mhm.
when they don't even know that's what they're supposed to see? There's
Mhm.
people who just take it, they don't even know what they're supposed to see, and
Mhm.
yet they see the same being.
Mhm.
And they describe her the same way. She looks like this. She, she did these kind of things. She did the tapping. She
Mhm.
scanned my body. Like people have those same experiences.
Mhm.
So that kind of suggests it's not just a random hallucination of your brain. You're actually tapping into the frequency of real beings in another real dimension. And
Mhm.
that's why people see the same beings. Like on DMT, one of the common things that people see is they're called machine elves. They're like elves, but they're somewhat made of machines and like working with like machines and stuff. A lot of people see that same group of beings,
Mhm.
like all over the world, even people who didn't read about what other people see, like they just take it, they end up seeing the same thing.
Mhm.
So that's very interesting. But talking about plant medicine, I think it's a good practice, and I think this is somewhat shamanic. I think it's a good practice to turn everything in your life into medicine. Like if you're going to use plants or substances, use it medicinally. Use it in a way to heal yourself. Use it in a way where you respect the process.
Mhm.
You learn as much as you can. You bring awareness to it. You integrate the lessons.
Mhm.
But I think you can extend that to anything. Use your relationships as medicine.
Mhm.
Use whatever you do for your work as medicine.
Mhm.
Find ways to use whatever energy is in your life
Mhm.
medicinally to heal you, to grow you, to
Mhm.
expand you, to benefit you.
Mhm.
I think just that attitude in general
Mhm.
applied to everything in our lives is very healthy. And if you also apply it to drug use or substance use, that's very healthy. It'll keep you out of trouble.
Mhm.
If you're applying that mindset, you probably won't get addicted. You probably won't have bad trips so
Mhm.
much, and you'll learn more from the experience. So, for everyone out there who is going to use drugs or substances, if you come into it with the attitude of respecting the substance, being open to learning from it, kind of communicating with the substance,
Mhm.
integrating the lessons afterwards,
Mhm.
I think you're going to be a lot better off and you'll have a much healthier relationship
Mhm.
with that plant or drug or substance.
I
Mhm.
So I
think
think that's just a very
that
good way
is
to do it.
that is a great word to use. Respect, like
Mhm.
Yeah.
respecting even
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like if you give it the respect it deserves, it will behave. Even if it's like a alcohol, it will behave good towards you.
Mhm.
It's like
Yes.
remind me of a quote of Bob Proctor says, the same electricity that cooks a man dinner can also cook the man. So it's like the
Yes.
same thing, but it will behave in a totally different way.
I totally agree, man. Yes, absolutely. And even with alcohol, I agree. I had another conversation with Maddie about alcohol, and he was saying, bless your alcohol before you drink it. I mean, you can try this. I think it's a good idea.
Mhm.
Put some good energy over it. He was saying, in his opinion, a lot of the cartels
Mhm.
and they actually like they put bad energy, like they'll curse some of the drugs before they sell it
Mhm.
because it goes beyond just making money. There's kind of a evil agenda with the whole thing. But
Mhm.
even some of the alcohol that gets sold to bars,
Mhm.
people had put bad energy into it. So take 30 seconds, take a minute, put some good energy into it before you drink it. Like just any form of respect
Mhm.
you can give to
You know,
these
it's so,
substances.
Mhm.
I mean, it can help you, you know? Did you want
yeah,
to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say the other part of respect that might be missing is self-respect. And
Sure.
so if you respect yourself and the life you're building, you're not trying to get a hit of heroin on the street every day. You're not
Right.
drinking yourself to sleep every night. If you respect yourself, you're going to seek different opportunities to upgrade your life. What a life designed is all about, helping people upgrade their lives in the ways that make sense to them, in the next right step for them, whatever that looks
Mhm.
like. But if you respect yourself, your orientation to plant medicine, Brian, as you described, would be one that is beneficial for them.
Yes.
So
Yes,
how do
that's
we
very,
get a hold of
that's,
you? Did you share everything you wanted to?
nope. Nope. I
Okay,
still got a
go
little
for
bit
it.
more.
Keep going.
All right. Um, yeah, and so another thing I want to say is I think, especially psychedelics, it shows you that you're not really seeing like the world, the reality. You're seeing things through your lens. Because when you take a psychedelic and you start seeing everything differently, it really shows you like you're seeing things through your brain chemistry, through your lens. But we tend to think we're seeing like the objective, true reality. To some extent, everyone's living in their own reality, in their own world, because we all have our own brain chemistry, our own vibration, our own consciousness. And when you take psychedelics, it really shows you you're in your own thing. You're in your own experience of reality right now. So I think that's cool. And another thing I wanted to mention is if you want to get a taste of the psychedelic experience, like mom, you could do this without actually using drugs. There is a breathing technique called holotropic breathing that you can try, and it actually releases DMT naturally. So you can look it up online and get the instructions, but basically you do like really deep, fast breathing for a sustained period of time. Like for like if you
Then you
keep
end up
doing
like
that,
high.
yeah, you end up high. It puts you in an altered state. If you keep
Yeah.
doing that for like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes,
Uh-huh.
you'll get a taste of the psychedelic experience without doing any drugs because it'll release some of your natural DMT.
Mhm.
So for anybody who wants to try psychedelics without actually getting a dealer and
Consuming a
doing
psychedelic.
drugs and all that,
Mhm,
you can try that. So,
mhm,
and a lot of people say that that works. I mean, everyone's experience is different, but you
mhm.
can try that. Um, so I think that's good. So you can reach me through alifedesign.org, and I'm going to start building the Life Design TikTok pretty soon. And also, I am Special K Coaching on Instagram.
Very good.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I'll share everyone's contact information below. Now, our last thing is songs. So
Hey,
I have a song, you have a song. Justin and Maddie had too many songs to choose from, so they didn't
right.
choose one. I don't know, Jonathan, if you had a song in mind about plant medicine at all. Well,
No, I don't.
okay, Brian, you want to share yours?
Sure. And this is just kind of like a fun thing that we do. People could bring a song or a poem, but or something, but you don't have to. There's a Ted Nugent song called Journey to the Center of the Mind. And it says, beyond the seas of thought, beyond the realm of what, across the streams of hopes and dreams, where things are really not. And then later the song goes, but please understand, you might not come back. So be careful if you're doing high doses. If you're doing small doses, you're fine. But always have a good environment that you're doing any substance in. Always be around good, positive people
Mhm,
who will be there for you,
mhm.
or put on positive music. Don't do mushrooms and like watch a horror movie. People
Yeah.
do stuff like that. Don't do that. That's really bad.
Mhm.
You can get PTSD from a bad trip. And by the way, I know a girl who did she was doing like ayahuasca by herself, like homebrew, and she messed herself up bad. She was not the same for, I would say, at least a year. Um, so you can transform yourself for the better or for the worse. You gotta be, you're kind of gambling with your consciousness a little bit
Mhm.
when you do these things. So just be careful. do stuff in a positive environment, respect the plants, respect any substance that you're using.
I appreciate that. Well, I have a song, and you know, it's from back in the day when I was coming up. Jefferson Airplane from the 60s
I
and
know that.
70s. White Rabbit, yeah, White Rabbit. And it talks about one pill makes you larger and another pill makes you smaller. And the pills your mother gives you make no difference at all. And so, and I'm down for a mother giving pills that make no difference at all. But the idea of seeing your perception change, I think by itself is helpful because as coaches, we question people's perceptions. They argue for their limiting beliefs. I can't get ahead in this job. My boss is never going to let me. I can't, you know, solve this problem or that problem. We help people shift their perceptions on the regular in coaching. And so to have a shift of perception and realize, wow, maybe modulating my perceptions is a thing. It's a thing. So I don't know if seeing, you know, some things taller and some things smaller and a white rabbit talking to you is the best thing, but knowing that your perceptions might not be permanently fixed, they could shift. I think that's for the good. So from a coaching perspective, so it's great to see you, Jonathan. I hope you feel better. And
It's
Yes.
getting there.
Feel better.
until next time, thanks everybody for joining.
All right.
Bye.
Good chat. Good chat.